Coming up right now on Lifestyle Magazine, Dr. John McDougall and the connection between diet and autism. Here are your hosts, Mike and Gail Tucker.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
How are you doing, John?
It's
good to have you here, as always.
Our good friend, Dr. John McDougall, is back with us today, and he's going to talk to us about the connection between diet and mental health. So is there really a connection?
You know, people wouldn't think so.
No.
It's not very often discussed. I mean, they would think about things like maybe caffeine and how
Right.
it affects their mind. And, of course, that's why people consume caffeine, is because it's one of the last legal drugs.
And well-loved as well.
And well-loved, yes.
And also to get the connection with alcohol. But the food is, I mean, in the number of people's lives and the just the sheer bulk of what you eat compared to, say, caffeine or alcohol, the food is huge. And so if it did have an effect, it could be tremendous.
Right.
And actually, I know it is a tremendous effect. We see worldwide, when we look at various populations of people, we see a direct correlation with depression and schizophrenia and eating the Western diet. The diet high in meat and dairy, low in starches, vegetables.
Depression and schizophrenia.
And schizophrenia, both worldwide. And there's been research done for over 50 years on the connection between what we eat and depression, for example. Let me just give you a little background on how that works. There are what we call neurotransmitters, chemicals in the brain.
Right.
And the proportions, the amount of these neurotransmitters depends upon what you eat. And people have probably heard about the amino acid tryptophan.
Right.
Okay, in fact, they used to sell
Turkey,
tryptophan.
they talk about that?
Yeah, they used to talk about it in terms of turkey, but that's the incorrect message. But they used to sell it actually as pills.
I knew you would say that.
Yeah. Well, it is, and I'll tell you why. They used to sell it as pills. So you eat the tryptophan gets into the body, it gets into the nervous system, and it makes serotonin. Serotonin kind of quiets the whole world around you, so everything's not so exciting. It relieves
More
depression, it
tranquility.
mutes hunger. It's a very important neurochemical. Well, here's where the connection comes. To get that tryptophan past what we call the blood-brain barrier, blood-brain, get it past this membrane, it has to go through little gates. And those little gates, they're occupied by other heavy neutral amino acids. Okay, so tryptophan has to get in the gate to get through into the nervous system. Well, if you eat animal foods, I'm talking about beef, chicken, fish, dairy products, they occupy all the little gates. And now your tryptophan can't get through, and now you can't make the serotonin. As a result, you get depressed. So the components of the food make a huge difference in just the the basics. But there's another mechanism here too. It has to do with schizophrenia and autism. And it's a kind of an allergic phenomenon, or people have described it as almost a psychedelic type of reaction. You know, when people take magic mushrooms and LSD and things like that, they know these chemicals get into the brain and they stimulate things, and they cause people to have really changed perceptions, really bizarre thinking. Well, the food proteins do that too. Okay, particularly food proteins, the ones that have been identified are those in milk. We're talking about cheese, and also in a group of plant foods that we identify as gluten, as high in gluten, which is an amino acid high in gluten, and those would be wheat, barley, and rye. So what happens is the gluten protein from the wheat, barley, and rye, and/or the casein protein from milk gets into the nervous system and it acts like a drug. It acts like LSD, or
So I drink milk and I hallucinate.
Well, some people do. You see,
Seriously.
Seriously, you do?
No. I'm saying seriously, that's a question.
Seriously, some people do, and it may not be the wild, bizarre hallucinations that we typically think about these powerful psychedelic drugs, but a subtle distortion of the environment, so much so that it's not subtle to those around you and for you dealing with the world. But you get this distortion because of these neuroactive peptides. That means neurologically active proteins that are found in wheat and also dairy foods. And it may not happen to you, Gail, or to Mike, or to myself, but there are some sensitive people, and maybe those people are sensitive because their gut opens up and allows these proteins to easily get into the bloodstream. Or maybe something else about them is going on that we haven't identified yet. But for whatever reason, these people suffer terribly from eating certain kinds of foods. And the nice thing is people have discovered this. And it's not a well-known message, and I have to be very blunt as to why it's not well-known, is because there's no profit behind it. So you got all these drug companies out there that sell drugs for autism or schizophrenia, and they give you quizzes to see whether you're crazy or not, you know, so that you can get into the market. And they sell all these drugs, and that's where everybody thinks it's at, is in the medications. It's not. The medications are of minimal benefit with serious costs, serious side effects. But a cure, and I'm really talking about a cure, for depression, schizophrenia, autism, and other mental problems can be had. And I believe by the vast majority of people, if they got this nugget of knowledge. And so, you know, they don't eat the animal foods and they don't eat the gluten-containing foods. They eat a diet of potatoes and rice.
Absolutely fascinating. And we're going to have more. We're going to